Welcome. We welcome you. And we are, tonight, if you don't know why you're here for Constitution classes. And we did this a few years ago, and the response was awesome, and we felt the need to do it again. We all need to brush up on our Constitution, don't we? Or am I the only one? Yeah, I think we need to do that, especially in the day and age that we live in. And so we're here together to learn a little bit and learn how the 14th Amendment applies to COVID-19. I thought I was going to get those turned around. 19th Amendment, COVID-14, but I got it right. So if y'all wouldn't mind, let's all stand together. We're going to have a word of prayer, and then we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. And let's thank the Lord tonight for being able to be in a free country. Amen. Well, Father, we thank you. We thank you that we're free. Lord, that was your idea, for us to be free, and we thank you, and we praise you, and we give you glory that we have those freedoms that were God-given. They were given by you to us. Government doesn't give it to us. You do. And we thank you for those freedoms and those liberties that you've given to us. We ask you to bless this night. Bless what we learn, Lord. We put it deep in our heart, Father, because these are words that you approve of. You approve of, Father. And so we thank you tonight, and we ask you to bless this evening and bless our time together. And Lord, as we stand for the Constitution, bless our lives going forward, because we're going to be called on. We are going to be called on to articulate what's in there in the coming days. And so I thank you that we have this privilege tonight, for it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Let's pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, born and unborn. Amen. You may be seated. And tonight we have with us Lyle Austin. He's going to be talking about the 14th Amendment and how it applies to COVID, and whether our rights and freedoms have been infringed upon, which I think they have. That's obvious. And so Lyle's going to teach. You're able to ask questions. Just please wait until I get the microphone to you, because we are recording this. You won't have to worry about being recorded, just probably the back of your head. But if you do want to turn around and look at the camera, that's okay too. Okay? All right. Without any further ado, Lyle, you're on.
I would assume that everybody can hear me. Good. If you don't hear me, just let me know and I'll speak up. I would like to say too, praise be to God for the freedoms that we have in worshiping in this country. There are a lot of countries around the world that don't have the freedoms we do, and we tend to neglect the fact that we have the freedom to worship. I will be covering aspects of the 14th Amendment this evening. It'll be section 1. There's a lot of other items that were put into that amendment when it was passed in 1869, I believe it was. I had planned on actually doing about 40 minutes of speaking, but rather than do that, as I go through the material this evening, I would just like you to ask questions. That way it's forefront in your mind as we're going through the material. The 14th Amendment talks about rights that we have not only in the Constitution, but they are God-given. Rights, and what are they? Life, liberty, and or property. And in the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, it talks about life, liberty, and or property. So that can be and property or property. An individual claim to a God-given ability to act for oneself and to be free from being acted upon by others, which can be legitimately defended by force, can be exercised by everyone simultaneously. Rights are given to us by God, and they're given to us across the board, at the same time, continuously. So we can exercise them continuously and simultaneously as a nation and as a people. exercised by everyone simultaneously and does not force others to act in order for that claim to exist. Rights stand on their own. So, in that conversation, we have actually 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess, points to talk about is rights. What are they? I just explained that. And where do our rights come from? Who possesses these rights? Oftentimes, we kind of look at our nation and say, well, it's our elected officials, it's our policemen, it's those people that run our towns, our counties, our states, and our federal government, but that's not true. And I'll explain that in a little bit. And why?
Because their job as policemen and administrators of the law, their job is to keep your neighbor from infringing on your rights and to keep you from infringing on your neighbor's rights.
That is exactly right. Our government was formed to protect us against a tyrannical government and not to infringe upon our God-given rights. So, where do the rights come from, or where do our rights come from? Rights are given as a gift from God. And our founding fathers understood this. They actually did understand it. And they were very careful in writing the Constitution to make sure that that was put in there, that we have rights. There was so much concern about that that there was a lot of debate during the time that the Constitution was being written. And there was a lot of debate, and there was disagreement, and they didn't all disagree, but they had to come together to put together a document that gets us to where we are today. And it stood the test of time. But as we're going into this modern day future, we're seeing this tore apart a lot faster. But I think a lot of us in this room know why this is happening. And it's because we've taken God out of schools, and we are changing written history so that people don't know where we came from. And if you can dumb down society, government takes a stranglehold. So, let's see. Oh, just a footnote here I wrote this morning. What came first, the chicken or the egg? And that's what I'm going to ask when it comes to rights are not gifted from one man to another, nor from one class of men to another. It is impossible to discover origin of rights other than when God created man. So, God created man and gave us rights. But did God create government first? No. He created man first, and then man created government.
A pseudo form of Godship.
Well,
Sort of.
yeah. I guess that's a good point. It is.
Well, the kings and queens, the so-called nobility that oppressed people, they claim that they were chosen by God to do this.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, that was the case, yes. So, God created man, man created government. So, it's obvious that it's a sin to steal. So, man created government to manage some of these things, to protect us so that our rights are not destroyed. And that I don't destroy your rights. Because our rights are God-given as long as we don't infringe upon another person's rights. So that's where government comes from. Man is the creator of government, making man having power over government. And that's exactly what our founding fathers wanted. They wanted us as individuals. Because when the Constitution was written, it was written for the person, local, county, state, federal. And now for some reason, we still have the same Constitution, but it's top down. And why? Does anybody know why that's happened? People control? Or have we allowed it? Something like the government will take care of me. They'll fix it.
They did.
their way. So, who possesses these rights? Man possesses these rights equally among all men. We are all created equal. As long as his or her rights do not take from one and give to another. So, I'll get into that in a little bit too, Once one takes and gives to another, then rights are gone and privilege is established. Why do individual rights matter in the first place? Why do they matter? Well, the entire basis of our country is based on an idea of the individual having rights. But we need to go back to the colonies and the founding fathers when they were under the tyrannical rule of the of England. And they controlled religion, they controlled taxes, we had taxation without representation. We're getting back into that situation again. That he, meaning the person, delegates company, power, and authority with those rights to the government to act on his behalf. Man formed a government. Man is under rights, doing master over government, not government over man. That's a big misunderstanding today. Let's see what the government's going to do. I guess a few months ago we saw what the government intended on doing. What restrains our own actions is the equal rights of others. What is the American dream? And the colonists at that time had an American dream. The American government is going to get out of the way and allow us to dream and become and do what we want to be. That's the American dream. This also means, as individuals, not infringing on another's rights for our own personal gain. Today, many people think the American dream is what the local, county, state, and federal government can do for him or her. When the Declaration of Independence was written, and I read that for the first time, I think I was around 12 or 13 years old. And I remember, and you have to pardon me, but I was thinking to myself, that's the best go-to-hell letter I've ever read in my life, to the King of England. I don't need you anymore. We can take care of ourselves, thank you. We appreciate and want our liberty, our life, and a pursuit of happiness. It doesn't mean a paycheck from the government. It doesn't mean a free cell phone. It means we are going to pursue happiness on our own. So goodbye, England. And here we are today. Now, this is something that Brian Miller spoke of last week when he was over at Pastor and Susan Sisty's house. And I've been talking to Marlis, my wife, about this too, is violation of oath by public office and any public officer who willfully and intentionally violates the terms of his oath as described by law shall upon conviction thereof be punished by imprisonment for no less than 1 year and no more than 5 years. Do you realize that public officials being voted in actually are required by law to uphold the Constitution by oath? How many of our local, county, state, and federal officials upheld the Constitution during this COVID situation? None of them. Now, I have to give Governor Bruce Gordon some credit. If you ever listen to his afternoon broadcast when we were shut down in Wyoming, he did say several times, this is a suggestion. He didn't say this is mandated, he said it's a suggestion. So I think he probably understands the Constitution. When this whole thing started, Marlis and I run a business down here in the other wing of this building. And I got a phone call from territory office letting me know that I was going to close down my business. And I asked the question, what for? Well, there's this thing going on, and you have to close your business. And I said, thank you, no thank you. I'm going to stay open. Well, you have to, he said. You have to close. And I said, no, I don't. And he said, yeah, you do. And I said, I'm not closing. And he said, well, how can you go against the rules? And I said, I have the Constitution on my side. What do you mean the Constitution? He said. And I said, read the 14th Amendment. And if you haven't, you really should, because I'm not closing. Come and get me. So he said, but everybody else is closing. And I said, I've been with this company for 34 years and you're categorizing me with everybody else? I'm not closing. So we stayed open. Nobody came and got me. Allowing Home Depot to stay open and requiring restaurants and other businesses to close is infringement on rights given by our Creator. Did they take from one and give to another? It's a violation of our rights, people. Home Depot had record sales and restaurants had nothing. I submit to you that businesses, schools, and other entities not required to close would have allowed for life, liberty, and property. They would have been allowed for that. Those deciding to close or those making the decision to stay home would have been allowed rights contained under the 14th Amendment. So, in a situation like this where we have an alleged pandemic, I'm not convinced that it's a pandemic, and all businesses would have, let's say, stayed open and we kept the schools open like Sweden did, do you suppose there could have been some people that stayed home and wore a mask? Do you suppose there could have been some people that would have gone to Albertsons and wore a mask? Yeah, and there could have been some people that actually went to Menards without a mask on and bought hardware. That is life, liberty, and property, people. We are smart enough as humans to make our own decisions on what's safe for us. And that's what we should have been allowed to do under the 14th Amendment. My clients made their own decisions as to what each wanted to do, and nobody contracted the virus, and nobody in my office contracted the virus. And by the way, Wyoming has really a fantastic record of recoveries and also deaths. I think we're at 20 or 21 deaths so far. And by the way, we've killed more people on our highways in Wyoming in that amount of time than have died of the COVID virus. Yes?
A couple of months ago, some of the commentators on Fox News, in fact, they had William Bennett, the author of Book of Virtues.
Good book.
He was telling people that he put out some statistics. Statistically, for every 1% of unemployment, we lose 5 to 10,000 people due to things like depression, suicide, the stress causes heart attacks and other illnesses. So, if he is right, we killed more people trying to prevent deaths from this so-called COVID-19 than we would have if we'd let the economy do its thing.
Yeah, and we just practiced herd immunity like Sweden did. And their numbers, by the way, are fantastic. Yeah, what we did was we essentially put off the inevitable. Today on the news, they said we have 100, anybody know what the numbers are? 100 and some odd thousand deaths? 130, yeah. But, yes.
And how many of those COVID deaths have not really been from COVID? They had cancer and then they died.
Yeah.
Pandemic.
You have a question.
Thank you. Okay, so sorry for coming in late. Vicki Kissick, for those of you that don't know me. I just can't help but tell you that here in Campbell County, there is non-factual information coming out about our COVID. And we know this because we have a family member who was tested positive for COVID. And then he didn't get better and he didn't get better and they retested him and he was negative twice. So it was a false positive. But they are still reporting him as being ambulanced to Billings as complications of COVID. And he's actually fighting for his life for leukemia. And it is happening in my family. And it really brought it home that these things that we're hearing all over the nation about these numbers being inflated and not correct is actually, it's happening right here. And my husband's going in to talk to the public health lady that keeps telling this untruth. to try to get her to correct the public record that Doug Kissick is not fighting COVID. He is fighting AML leukemia.
By the way, Jake
So
had COVID also.
he was in Texas and he had COVID.
Mhm.
But so it's just happening right here, and this
Yeah.
real. Like, they are lying right here in our community, and none of this really matters unless we show up, we speak up, and we stand up for what we know to be the truth of the Constitution and what our rights are.
So we're looking at 130,000. They're saying, yeah, by the way, the annual deaths for influenza in the United States is around 60 to 65,000. That's what the numbers are. So if we have stage numbers for COVID, they could be less than the annual influenza.
And Lyle just would also to say, the reason why she's bringing this up in public meetings is she's applying for grants.
Oh.
So- Now, our family is a part of their statistics, so they can get more federal funding, which isn't gonna happen, by the way.
It's not.
We're gonna go public if
Okay.
she don't correct the record.
But if you and I did something like that to enhance our funding, we'd probably be in jail.
Good chance of it. Yeah, very good chance of it.
The news record, I just caught a glimpse of it coming out of Market a few minutes ago.
Said that in the county, COVID cases were up 65%.
That's
That
because
that was the front page of the news record.
That's because they're testing. Now, and I know this to be true because a client of mine they've been clients of mine for over 30 years. Oh, I hope I get this story right. For the most part, it'll be correct. Doctor sent her to be tested for COVID. Did she test positive? No, it was negative. Okay, but she didn't get well. Doctor suggested she go back again and be tested. Was she negative the second time? Okay. So she asked the question, and then they said, well, you might as well come back again in a week or two and get tested again. Why? Well, just to make sure you don't have it. So what are you doing with these numbers? And the lady said that she was talking to on the phone said, well, we're counting each one of those. For the same person, those are separate counts. Yeah.
As negative?
As negative. Whatever that, why, I don't know. And she asked the lady, my client asked the lady, why are you counting it twice? Well, we just do.
It's all about federal funding.
It could be.
That sounds like sovereignty.
Somebody's got to pay for those tests.
Yeah.
That reminds me of something I saw in a movie, a Star Trek movie, where Scotty was training a new guy, and the captain called and asked a question how long it would take to fix something, and the new guy said, oh, about 20 minutes, and after the page, Scotty got on this new engineer. He said, no, you exaggerate. And then when you do it in less time, you're a miracle worker.
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Lyle, could I ask, I don't know anyone that has COVID. I know of a person who knows someone.
But your friend that had it or acquaintance, what were the symptoms like? Were they like the cold? Because
Well, he
we're hearing
called
this.
me 5 days after he was well.
Mhm.
So I said, so what was the experience? And he said, I was tired for 3 days. Silence.
That's it.
That's it. 80% of the people that contract influenza get well on their own without doctor or medical assistance. Nationally in this country, 95% of the people get well upon contracting COVID, with only 5% requiring medical assistance. It is not as dangerous as influenza.
And I think we need to call it by its name, it's the Wuhan virus.
The Wuhan, yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's something else that's going to rock your boat. I watched this wasn't on my script, but I think it's important enough to mention this. I watched a YouTube interview about a month ago. This lady is going to be coming out with a book shortly. The federal government placed a gag order on her about 12 years ago because she knows stuff about CDC and that wonderful doctor that's on the president's staff. And this individual was interviewing her, and she said, we need to get over this. This is not as bad as the government is telling us. That are looking to make large cha-ching over this. The fatalities aren't as bad as other issues, and she mentioned car accidents and abortion and some other things. And the interviewer said, so if it's not so bad, how do you explain Italy? And she said, there's only old people in that country. All of the young people have left because the Muslims have taken over. So when they get sick, there's a higher chance of mortality because they're old people. But she said in Italy, if you've had an influenza shot, you are 35% more likely to contract COVID. But the interviewer didn't ask, why is that? And it bothered me for a couple of weeks. And I've always known that the influenza virus is incubated in chicken eggs. They have to incubate the virus in something to make it grow so they can make quantities of it. So I got online 2 weeks ago, and I just typed in incubation process for influenza vaccines. And the article started talking about chicken eggs and whatnot. And I guess most of our vaccines for influenza are manufactured in China, is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Well, for the flu season 2019-2020, influenza viruses have been incubated in dog kidneys. Dogs carry corona. In fact, one of our employees wasn't feeling well, and the doctor suggested she go get tested, and she was tested positive for the antibody. And she was kind of upset about the whole thing. And I said, well, Taylor, you've got 2 dogs. What do you expect? And she said, what's that got to mean or do with anything? And I said, well, it's commonly known that dogs carry corona. So if you're a pet owner, chances are you have the antibody. Now, corona is a single-strand virus, and influenza is a dual-strand virus. So when they kill the virus to make a vaccine out of it, are they killing the corona also? They have different molecular structures. Where'd this stuff come from? It was made.
It was patented, so it has to be man-made.
Yeah. So I think it wasn't intentional. I'm going to go ahead and say it wasn't intentional, but I think it was an accident. Well, I'm just going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that you think it was an act of war.
All the scientists disappeared in Wuhan. And could we have the name of that lady in the book coming out?
Is it? I didn't catch her name when I was watching it. I had my mouth open and I was mouth breathing watching this thing. Is it? Okay. It's a lady, right?
It's a lady, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the name?
She has a movie coming out. It's called Plandemic.
Okay. I think we'll find out about a lot of things. What time is it? Okay. Let's talk about the Second Amendment. Go ahead.
Kind of interesting. Every 2 years before an election, there's another flu of some kind comes out to cause trouble to upset the election. Swine flu, bird flu, chicken flu, people flu, whatever. There's something something comes out, and you look at the statistics every 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
point out the other year, and how come it dies right after the election. So this is all political deal to mess up the election so that they can get a mail-in ballot, so they can mess up the voting to get Trump out of office. And so it's the rest of it's all
Yeah.
farce.
Well, and it also can be a two-sided coin, because when Barack Obama was president, there was a flu that was going through the nation, and nothing was done until there were 50,000 deaths. The news, and the news that said nothing about it. We were talking about it on the news before there were 50,000 deaths to corona. So it can be a two-sided coin on that also. I just try not to be too much of a conspiracy theorist, give people the benefit of the doubt.
Well, that term was invented, does anyone remember, it was invented after
Cover-up. It was, somebody here has to remember when it was started.
It was Lyndon Johnson.
Okay, after Lyndon Johnson, they coined the phrase conspiracy theorist to shut us down.
Oh, okay.
So it's okay.
Oh,
to
did
be-
it come out of the McCarthyism era?
The JFK assassination.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's when it was invented.
Yeah. I remember talking to Mike Enzi on the phone a few years ago, and he was a proponent of the Pacific Trade Partnership. And that treaty was as big as Obamacare as far as pages, because he sent me a copy of it. And I told him, I said, the thing is unconstitutional, Mike. How can you stand for that? And he said, no, it's not unconstitutional. I said, yes, it is, because under that Pacific Trade Partnership, if a U.S. citizen is found to violate that trade partnership, they're tried on foreign soil in a tribunal. It's not a U.S. court. And he said, well, I've been studying the Constitution ever since I was an elected official, and I can tell you that it's not unconstitutional. And I said, you've been studying the Constitution for how many years? I said, I've read it 3 times, 47 minutes each time. How long does it take? The conversation was over. I think we overthink stuff, people. I really do. Yeah. And then, but what he was talking about was not the Constitution. What he was talking about is case law of the Supreme Court. And that's when things really get complicated, is when you start throwing in case law. And I've been an insurance agent for 34 years. I was involved in a pretrial on a case in Sheridan. And I told our legal counsel, I said, don't you use case law on this one, you're going to lose it. Well, we were going to, and he said, why not? And I said, because case law happens to be a round peg in a square hole. And this case we're dealing with is not actually what the statute says, and it's not the round peg in a square hole, it's an oval peg in a rectangle hole. We will lose this, and we lost it, because every case has its own merit. And I told Mike Enzi in that phone conversation, I don't care about case law. I care about what the Constitution says. Case law comes about when it doesn't fit the law, and then the judges and juries decide otherwise. So let's talk about the Second Amendment first, and then we'll get to...
Well, I have a question
Sure.
kind of related to
The 14th Amendment,
Sure.
because it says that they can't deprive a person of life and liberty. And what about these protests where the protesters block the street and, stop people from being able to move around or open their businesses? That's not legal, is it?
No, it's unconstitutional.
Why won't they
Oh.
stop it?
But
First Second Amendment comes in handy.
I've got something in the Wyoming state statutes also that's going to blow your mind in a few
Then-
minutes.
And I hope you can tell us why nothing's being done about this.
Okay, let's just go to the 14th Amendment. It's kind of like news media saying, after the commercial break, we're going to be back and we're going to interview, or we're going to talk about this subject. This is the way to keep your attention. So let's just go to it. All persons born are naturalized in the United States. All persons born are naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So what is the jurisdiction thereof? What does that mean? It means the United States. They're subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which is the Constitution of the United States. Okay, thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So you're a citizen of the United States, but you're also a citizen of Wyoming because you live here. Now, here's the key. No state, which means federal government or state, shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property. So, when they shut businesses down, were they deprived of property? Is that unconstitutional? Yeah. Why haven't we done anything about it? Remember, here a few minutes ago I read what the penalty is for not upholding the Constitution. Not less than 1 year and not more than 5 years imprisonment. Not one single local, county, state, or U.S. lawmaker enforced the Constitution or upheld it, and they took the oath of office. When a redneck bar north of town decided to open up, called the sheriff's department, and the sheriff said, well, we're going to have to refer you to the state health department. So they called the state health department. They were then referred back to county public health. And an individual came out and looked at it and decided that everything was okay because they were outside and drinking their adult beverages outside, I guess.
Beer garden.
Beer garden. There you go. So a few days later, or hours later, sheriff's department shows up, looks at it, and apparently there were 2 citations written. And the patrons agreed to pay for the fine. So the business owner got a hold of their attorney, and he laughed about it, and he said, oh, forget it. You're going to wind up going to court, and the judge is going to throw it out. Asked why, and he said, because the judge isn't going to know under what statute to enforce it. So public health and the county decided they had to do something fast. They petitioned the state to get businesses opened up because they were worried that this redneck bar was going to just blow the top off of the bottle. Excuse my pun. But they were concerned about that. So they had to do something, so they got a variance so businesses could start opening up and the public didn't catch on to what was going on. So why haven't we done something about it? We need to get a hold of our elected officials and remind them they took an oath of office, and that actually the sheriff's department is responsible because, by the way, the county sheriff is the ultimate authority in any county. We all can call the sheriff's department and say we want everybody arrested that didn't enforce their oath of office, including you. He deferred to the state health department, and they are not elected. Bureaucrats.
Seems to me, I read where the only person that can arrest the sheriff is the coroner.
Yeah, that's correct. That is absolutely correct. Yes. The coroner has the authority. Yeah. Well, somebody's got to do it. Yes.
About ready to crawl to my skin with the lack of knowledge. But mostly the reason why I believe that people are not responding because they don't understand that the power is in the people. But they don't also, they need to take one step further and know that that doesn't mean it's like character assassination warfare. It's more of having the knowledge of what your rights are and then pursuing those rights in a calm and methodical way and not knee-jerk react. And I think that because this came on and we were all still just trying to work and make a living, that we have lived in this apathy of we've elected these guys, they campaigned, they promised this, okay, we want to go back to work and make a living. And when this hit, we just had this expectation that they not only had the knowledge of the Constitution of the state of Wyoming or the United States Constitution, but also that they had the backbone and perseverance to do it. And I think anyone that runs for an elected office right now has to really know that they're being led to do that because it is a warfare out there. So I don't want to really go down the road too much of because the elected officials are ignorant. We are an apathetic voter base. We have been for too long.
And
that's
an apathetic voter base then gives us an ignorant elected
right. And I think
personnel.
that's why it's so important to have these meetings because from here, we don't go out and I'm not saying anybody do this, but I've been known to do this, like act like you know everything. But you go out and you encourage people to know what their rights are. And it's not really like break it down for them. It's not, you don't have to go all fisticuffs.
No.
You got to go at it and ask a lot of questions. I mean, Jesus asked, there was not only statements that he made, but he made a lot of statements through questions. He helped people understand the knowledge through questions and engaging their brain because people know what they've had in this lifetime. and they know that it's leaving. They don't know why, and that's what we're supposed to help them to know
So
how to go back to
you
it.
pushed to my ending statement, and I was going to say, don't call the sheriff's department or your elected officials and say, who do we have arrest you? Don't do that. My closing statement was going to be, call them and just ask the question. Because you can get more by just asking questions, which provokes them to go back and look at the truth and say, whoa, somebody's finding out about this stuff. And then you go back. But technically, you could call and say, I need to have all of these people arrested. But that's probably the crass way of doing it. Yeah. Anyway, so I guess I don't have to do my closing. Sure.
Our daughter has a hair salon, and she did close. When she reopened on May 1st, she did not follow the guidelines. She was not going to take contact information and did not enforce masks. But she was afraid of the fine that she could have been given. So if, hopefully it's not going to happen that they close again or recommend that, but what should her action be if they deem that she should close again?
That is a really good question. So let's finish up section 1 of Amendment 14. It says that United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process. Due process of the law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law. So she would get a citation, she would have to appear in court, and she would take the Constitution with her and she would read that section that says, without due process of law or deny any person within the jurisdiction of equal protection under the law. I am entitled by Constitution for equal protection. She can tell the judge that, and that's what the bar was going to do.
Real quick, if you notice, all the businesses that were closed down or threatened to be closed down are required to carry a state license.
Yes.
So they're dodging the Constitution with administrative details. They can't take the hair,
But they
they
can
can
take the
take the hair
license.
salon license, food license, liquor license. If you notice, the only people they shut down, people who have a license.
Yeah, and they take the license. That's a good point. Well, that's why I wanted to cover the Second Amendment.
You got one more question, Mark.
Okay.
So with the red flag laws that they're trying to impose on states and cities and so forth fall under the same partial sentence?
Well, with the red flag laws, that's where you turn a neighbor in because he's cooking for Cocoa Puffs, right?
Yeah, and
Or the doctors,
without any.
What?
or the doctors say that he's incompetent, so
Yeah.
they take his guns away.
Right.
No, they come and get your guns first,
Right.
Yeah.
and then they put you in jail and charge you.
So-
Because somebody said, hey, this guy's wild.
So I'm doing this talk tonight, doing some education. It gets out on the street that I'm doing this. So the authorities go, let's say we've got that law, and they exercise red flag on me, and they take my gun away. And I'm not wacko. Well, my wife says I am, but she just, yeah.
That's why they're trying to pass the red flag laws in the state, so that once the legislation is passed, that they have a foothold to carry that out. That's why we have to stay ahead of the red flag laws so closely. And they use the emotional side of it as far as we're taking care of the mentally ill. I mean, you don't want them to go kill themselves, do you? And it's very difficult when they start working on the emotional side. That's why you have to learn to separate that we care about those people, but we separate that we know our rights to bear arms.
That's a really dangerous maneuver because you got to remember the founding fathers and the people that fought for independence. They were defined as insurgents, and then after the war was over, they were patriots. So only, oh no, wait a minute, only 17% of the colonists wanted freedom. They were insurgents. Believe me, they were insurgents.
He asked how you.
What's that?
Number.
Oh, John Adams' brother wrote a book. I read that book. And he was talking about the independence, and it was a tough road because only 17% of the colonists wanted to be independent. And look where we're at today.
It was probably mostly because they just wanted to be left alone. And they didn't understand that to be left alone, they had to be willing to stand up at times
Mhm.
for certain things. I mean, if that number's about true, I mean, it was,
If anybody has a mobile device, look it up, see if I'm correct.
not that I'm doubting that, I'm just saying it's probably.
Yeah.
So,
That's what my memory tells me from reading the book. Yeah. We're just about done here. We've covered Second Amendment. I need to cover that before we wrap this up. No, wait a minute. First Amendment, I'm sorry. Congress shall make no law representing an establishment of religion. Does anybody in this room know what that means? Because we've got interpretations all over the board on that. Susan, can you explain it? Any church.
Right, they cannot say, like in England, you have a state church. They cannot make, or a church that is official by the state, you go to it.
So the interpretation that certain organizations define the First Amendment are incorrect.
They're incorrect.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of people to peacefully assemble. But let's go back to COVID. We were violated in our life, liberty, and property, but the press was never inhibited. Religious organizations were caused to shut down, but the press was never restricted.
But the rioters, for the most part, were left alone. Mayors and governors told the police to stand down.
Oh, so you're saying that people couldn't assemble in a place of worship, but they could riot?
Yeah.
Oh,
Peaceful protest.
okay. I'm sorry, peaceful protest.
Is it true that they could not, as houses of worship, or was it that the houses of worship fell in line? Because we had a church here in town that said, gonna test it, gonna open
Yeah.
up, we're gonna meet.
Actually, Vicki, you're correct. They fell in line.
And I'm not saying that to be mean or anything, I'm just saying, you know, as a family, we feel like we're pretty savvy. And when Doug got tested positive, they said for the primaries had to quarantine. Why didn't we question that? Why didn't we as a family say, no, but we were the sheep as well?
Mm-hmm.
And so I only say that because I don't want people to think I'm on the high horse. But I'm just saying, it's because we allow it. And
Yes.
we're gonna beat that drum, beat that drum, beat that drum. And somewhere, sometime, there has to be those that are willing to risk being the sacrificial lamb per se of the situation to really know.
Like me
if they will-
refusing to close my business.
Yeah, if they will really force it. We
Mhm.
have to force their hand to
Right.
break the
Diplomatically, though.
Right, I'm not saying, like I said, not fisticuffs, but
Yeah,
you gotta have some backbone. I think once the people realize that, and they're not afraid,
right.
people just wanna be left alone
But,
mostly.
but the people have to be taught that our Constitution was written to protect the individual. Not herds, but individuals. Got you.
I have a daughter-in-law who is an attorney from Latvia. Latvia used to be part of Russia, but they've been in their own country many, many times. She and I have had some conversations about the Bill of Rights in our country. She and my son now live in the United States. And she was saying, well, no, in my country we have the right to safety. And I said, Biba, if you have the right to safety, then you're giving up all the other rights that you have. And she and I really went around on that and trying to get her to understand that you don't have the right to safety. You don't have the right to health. You don't have, you're responsible for all that, but you don't have the right to safety.
I've got a gentleman back here that has a question too, but I'm going to fill that in for you. in the Declaration of Independence, it says that God gave us, or gives us, the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And then the 14th Amendment, yeah. And then the 14th Amendment says life, liberty, and property. Okay? So I submit to you that those three are synonymous. That you can't have liberty and not property and life. And of course we're born, so we have life. God gave us life. But if we don't have property, are we free? Do we have rights? Our founding fathers were very wise in what they did. They missed that part, life, liberty, and property. No, and that's the reason why there was a lot of disagreement. And there was hard feelings, and there were probably some people that didn't like each other at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's disagreement.
but that's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay to disagree.
Yeah, you have a question.
So during this pandemic and President Trump declaring a national emergency, there were a lot of governors and mayors throughout the country saying, well, because of this national emergency, you don't have any constitutional rights anymore. Is that correct?
I disagree. Our constitutional rights are our Constitution. They're not waived. There was no state of emergency. There was no martial law. There was nothing declared. So how do we lose our constitutional rights if there's no martial law declared?
Groupthink.
They frightened us.
They frightened us. Vicky's absolutely right. It was kind of a herd thing. We just followed the crowd, is what we did.
They frightened us, but they also kind of emotionally blackmailed us.
Mhm.
And I think for a lot of us, you know, we wanted to do the right thing. You know, we didn't want to put our neighbors in danger. We didn't want to cause more death and destruction, you know, by appearing in public without a mask or, you know, or appearing in public at all. And I think that a lot of us went along maybe that first month kind of going, you know, we're not gonna rock the boat, we're gonna do what's right, what we were being told was right. And I think that's why a lot of the churches shut down, because they wanted to appear as, you know, we care about our community. We don't, you know, we don't wanna make anybody sick or anything like that. But I think the longer it went on, and this is proof of it, the more we kind of got annoyed, because we're seeing the back and forth and the chaotic thinking involved in, you know.
The truth of it.
You think exactly.
But if it came down to brass tacks, how many people in this country have died of COVID? We'll never know. And it's probably not that many.
Unless some prophet has a revelation from God, but even then,
Mhm.
we'll be wondering, is he a true prophet?
Well, and you can just about take it for granted that there's going to be another something happen that's going to be put in front of us for some reason.
I just want to say the first pastor that said no and refused to shut down was Rodney
Howard Brown in Tampa. And Rodney Howard Brown co-authored the book, The Killing of Uncle Sam, which is like a college textbook on the deep state. He knew this was coming, and he didn't shut down. But he did invest $100,000 in hospital-grade device to cleanse. But he knew what was going on. The Killing of Uncle Sam.
Yeah. One of the last three items that I had put down on my bullet point was, while talking to many people about the subject of constitutional rights, some individuals have indicated that the Constitution doesn't have an importance when it comes to saving lives, as lives are more important. While talking to many people about the subject of constitutional rights, some individuals that I have talked to indicated that the Constitution doesn't really have an importance when it comes to the importance of lives. Then we deserve neither. And we won't have. But that's how they come after your emotions. But we don't know that that's true. We don't know what the numbers would have been because we see Sweden. They practice herd immunity and their numbers are great. I keep coming back to that. This was staged. I believe it was staged.
Look at
Okay.
South Dakota. South Dakota, I mean, their numbers are not horrible. And
No.
She didn't enforce on her people.
No, she didn't.
And she was pleased as punch that the president came there amongst the crowd.
Welcome him there, yes. Okay, so this nation sees, people, this nation sees 2,000 people die a day on our roads. Multiply that times 365. We haven't outlawed modes of transportation. Yeah.
Candace Owen lived in New York, and I listened to one of her programs, and she said on average 355 people die per day in New York because of the size of the population.
Right.
COVID was right at that amount. It's around 10,000 a month, and those are the numbers they were reporting.
Yeah. But think
That's
about
a normal
it.
day.
Can you imagine if we were losing 2,000 people a day to COVID? The ruckus we would be seeing? Here's another one for you. And this is the one that just really gets me. Is we're killing 30,000 babies a year. I mean, a month in this country, 30,000 babies. We would have locked doors if COVID was killing that many people every month in this country. Multiply that times 12. That's a lot of humans, yes.
Speaking of that, just before we came here, we were listening to Fox News, and they said 43 abortion-type clinics illegally received, Planned Parenthood
Received money.
And they were not eligible for it because they are part of a larger group. And this is supposed to be a small business administration type thing. They were not small business, they were big
And
business.
it was using the given name, our tax office.
30,000 babies, okay, in a month. And the federal government, the local and the county and the state government is not requiring distance. You get it. Yeah, it depends on what the topic is, people.
This is done to our psyche. We are social animals. We need to hug. We need to talk. We need to shake hands. We need to see
Right.
people. This has hurt us terribly.
It has.
The hypocrisy of this is that they're wanting to kill off the people to lower the population for the whole gamut. Why don't they leave this alone, let it run its course if they're trying to kill off the population anyhow?
Just let it run its course.
It's the hypocrisy of it that's hard to swallow.
It is. That's what bothers me the most is the hypocrisy. Vicki, Brian Miller out of Sheridan, when he was over at Sisty's house last week, mentioned the oath of office of our people are elected and how they're breaking the law. He mentioned that in the crowd. So I just wanted to mention he's aware of it.
Unless we, the people,
Right.
hold them accountable. It
But I'm
doesn't matter
wondering-
unless we get to the ballot box.
I'm wondering how much in his campaign he's going to vocalize that.
That's a wonderful thing, but it won't matter unless the people engage the people. And,
They have
and
to.
I love that, like what's happening in our community right now. I don't agree with the way that our city council handled that. But I also, and I understand this, I don't agree with the way that the other side's gone about it either. But is it their right to do so? And we have to be very careful when we say, well, one time my husband says, well, when he was a commissioner, he says, well, they can't say that on Facebook. And I said, well, we might not like it, but they really can.
They really can.
And so you have to really think about that when we're upset about the way people are going at things. When it's something of special interest to us, we, in our human nature, want to say, by gosh, we don't like that, or we really like that. But do we really believe that in principle? Because the coin can be flipped on
It's a
you. That's why
two-sided coin.
you have to
It
stand on
really is.
principle.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. I got a lot on my mind and my heart. Wow. I appreciate you getting this going again. I really do. But there's so much ground we must and have to cover.
There is.
Where it says that the people have the right to peacefully assemble. and to petition government for redress of grievances. What happens when that is no longer peaceful?
Then
Why
law-
doesn't the governor, why, I mean, like Susan asked earlier, why aren't they shut down when it becomes unpeaceful? It's against the Constitution, what they're doing.
Well, there were some protests in Gillette, but we had law enforcement. And we also had civilians with a lot of firearms downtown. I actually left my handgun at home, and one guy walked up to me and said, "Where's your handgun?" And I said, "I don't need it." He said, "Why not?" And I said, "Well, look around. Lead starts flying, I'm going to find the undercarriage of a car, because I don't need so many breathing holes." Yes.
Sorry to reverse the topic a little bit. Vicky, talking about having to be responsible as the people of this nation, I regret to inform you that the people in our schools right now are not going to do that.
Not all of them.
Out of 3 in my graduating class, including myself, that's all I could pick out that would actually stand up. We're losing in the schools.
But who are we electing to the boards?
It's just a cycle that
It is, it's frustrating.
I don't know if this nation can pull itself out of.
I believe we can.
I think you do with
With
your
Yeah.
God's help.
This, but some of it might be
With God's
fear,
help, we will.
because, and I appreciate as a younger generation that you see that, but it comes back to who are we electing to these boards? And
Mhm.
are we holding them accountable to know what they're being elected for? And it's just like mandated term limits. So we go in the ditch a little bit. The reason why I don't believe in mandated term limits is because I believe in an educated, involved, and engaged elected.
Education empowers, and I don't believe in term limits either. If we don't like them, vote them out.
Yes, but it's
Yeah.
hard work.
It is.
It's hard work to
Yeah.
engage the voters. It's hard work to hold people accountable. You must have sacrifice. And that's where.
Are
it
we
really
willing to do that as a
separates.
society?
Yeah, and it's scary because we see what happens to people who sacrifice. They character assassinate them, they crucify them in the media. And, just like when I found out about the masks coming to Albertsons and all that, and however they're going to enforce it. My very first phone call was to Troy. And I said to him, "Troy, are you going to provide masks for everyone that comes into your store?" He said, "No." I said, "Are you going to mandate that everyone that comes in your store wears a mask?" "No." And he said, "And I might go to jail for it." And he was willing to. And when we talk about community, you know what community is? When that man goes to jail, we protest.
That's right.
We come together.
Yeah.
We peacefully protest.
Mhm.
We make
Oh, and
those
jail's
calls.
not so bad. I go there several times a week.
But that's what we have to learn to do. Is what is community? Define that and then do that.
Mhm.
Why aren't people protesting in the streets over the death of a police officer?
Yeah, we need to break this up anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.